Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Seahawks fans, welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers here to talk Seahawks football. We've got a preview show for you today. The Atlanta Falcons. Seahawks are on the road this coming Sunday to face off against the Falcons at 10 a.m. Pacific time game. Doesn't seem to have mattered in the least the last 10 years or so, 12 years of the Pete Carroll era. But we've got a new head coach this time around, new structure, new practicing, new everything, and we're going to see if that matters this time around. Welcome in, Keith. How you doing?
Doing good. 10 a.m. games they're hard on West Coast teams. They'll tell you that. The records typically show that, but Seattle, after the first couple of years with Pete Carroll, starting in the around 2011 or 2012, they've had a good record on the East Coast. Carroll made it an emphasis every year, which with terms of practice times and stuff, to get the team up and used to playing early. And what we don't know is if that carries over, if McDonald is doing similar things, or if it's going to be like most of the rest of the West Coast teams in the league where they start to struggle. But honestly, I'm not real worried about that. Right now, I just want this team to get right in terms of itself. I'm not really worried about the time of the game or any of that thing.
There's a couple of opportunities after scouting this team a little bit, getting ready for this show. There's a couple of opportunities in a couple of different position groups that I think Seattle has an opportunity to get right. The biggest one for me is on the offensive side of the ball, running the ball. That would be where I would attack Atlanta right from the get-go and just kind of see if they can stop the run and then pivot from there. But they've struggled doing that consistently throughout the season so far. They have won 3 straight games in their division. Pretty decent team, really excellent team on offense, I do have to say. They're somewhere in the middle of, let's say, the 49ers, the Lions, and the Bills. You wouldn't think of putting Atlanta in that bucket, but that's exactly where they're at so far this year as far as their offensive performance has been concerned. They're a very well-balanced team. Seattle's got its work cut out for it on the defensive side of the ball, particularly stopping the run. But we shall see. It's a new week. We've got 10 days to kind of refigure this thing out, and I hope there's some improvement there. And
one of the things
out.
with the 10 days and the kind of the mini bye advantage of having a Thursday night game is that this team has got extra time to get healed up and figure out what's going on health wise, because this team has been banged up. The Seahawks have, and the extra days getting people back, and it's more than just like the guys that have been out, but it's like everyone plays through little injuries. And when you have 10 days off between games, those all those bruises and little things have a chance to heal up some and get everyone kind of back to full speed. So it's a good situation for them. They've needed this week badly, but there are still some injury stuff that we need to talk about here.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go for it.
So it looks like Artie Burns made it back for one game and played pretty well as the nickel, and then hurt his toe and got placed on injured reserve today. So his season is done. Hopefully that means that
his season isn't necessarily done. It's a minimum of 4 games, but they only have the ability to bring back 2 players off of IR.
Yeah.
And
that's the thing is, and one of them is going to be Uchenna Nwasu.
Right. And hopefully the other being who so far? I mean, Abe Lucas has been off since the beginning, so he doesn't count towards that.
Yeah, number. He doesn't count that because he's not. That was one of the advantages of having him be on the the PUP list and not AR, is because I think I said AR, IR, it bec- is that he doesn't count towards that. They can activate him when he's healthy. But yeah, I mean, you're looking at you can only do it twice as far as pulling people off injured reserve, and one of them is going to be Nuasu.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know if there's like, do you use that rare of
you've got
thing
George
on a guy like
Fant.
Burns?
Yeah, well, you've got George Fant. So it's going to be
or George Fant's going to be the other one.
Nuasu. Yeah, that's what it's going to be. Jarek Reed was the other player that came off of IR, designated to return to practice. You'd mentioned some news prior to pushing the record button about Abe Lucas. What do you got?
Jarek Reed, while I'm grabbing that, he was on the PUP list, not our IR. So his designated practice does not affect the IR status. But the news is that there's talk about Abe Lucas again. We got an injury update on him. McDonald said he won't play this week. That's guaranteed. But the team is hopeful he'll be returning to practice soon. So he needs to get
huge news. I mean, that is a big, huge thing right there, because they have so far to this very moment have not indicated any hint as to whether or not there was even a timeline associated with Abe Lucas. And now we've got some sort of a timeline.
Mm-hmm.
We've got, he may return to practice. Now, when that happens, they've got 3 weeks, 21 days to make a decision whether to permanently place them on IR or to activate them onto the active roster. Is that correct?
That is correct. And so but it starts the process, right? If he's ready, and let's say he starts practicing at some point this week, or maybe early next week, because they weren't going to wait till after this game, that means he's got a maximum of 3 weeks. He's within 3 weeks of being on the field, or he's not going to play at all this year. Because if they activate him and they're just like, nope, this isn't going to happen, then they shut him down again, then he's done for the year.
I was just trying to open up my schedule, and for some reason I can't open it to find out when our bye was. I think we've got 3 more games and then the bye, right? So
sounds right.
They would have the next 3 games. There's 3 weeks. If he's going to be activated or potentially start practicing after this game, he would have 2 weeks and then the bye week.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, have the ability to come back. That seems to make a lot of sense to me.
And he would be back for the second San Francisco game. So
wow. Okay.
He would miss.
So that's
he would miss the Falcons, Bills, Rams, but then come back for San Francisco, Arizona, and the Jets, and then the stretch run. And honestly, they could use him. Stone Forsythe has been overmatched in that position. We know Lucas is the better player. Even hurt and struggling last year, he was a better player than Forsythe was. And
absolutely.
So getting him back would be huge. The other thing is that they did, it's another week of Jason Peters being on the roster and continuing to get himself into shape and ready to play. There is a chance that he will be ready to play and start this week. I would push it back another week if I'm going to make bets, but it is still a possibility that he will be ready.
And then George Fant, haven't heard anything on George as far as when he would be ready. Although the feeling was when he did go onto IR, it was more precaution and just kind of making roster spots available and so forth, and him not actually maybe needing all that time. Well, turns out maybe he did.
Because he'd be off it by now.
Yeah,
because that was after week 1, and so he'd be off and playing again. It doesn't sound like that's in the works. So I was thinking that it was going to be an 8-week time out, just simply because of the type of injury. And so I'm still looking at him being out for a couple more weeks at least.
So out of all these transactions, McClendon Curtis was signed back to the practice squad after he was cut this last week. Byron Murphy. We can start talking about Byron Murphy again, Keith. He was returned to practice, although the first practice on Monday was a walkthrough. Have not heard reports today whether he was in pads and full go or not. They haven't released that information yet, to my knowledge. But yeah, 6 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, half a sack, 1 quarterback hit, 7 pressures in three games, and somewhat of a presence in there to
He's such
help.
a disruptor. He's such a disruptor on the
and
inside.
He makes everybody else look good.
He lives in the backfield. He just makes it hard on running backs because they have to go around him to get to a hole. He makes it hard on quarterbacks because they can't step up in the pocket. He is a guy that makes everyone around him better and can't wait. They can't get him back soon enough. They've desperately needed him.
So let's talk about the transaction that they made. So the Seahawks were one of the first team counting down towards the trade deadline to actually make a move. And the Seahawks traded a 2026 6th round pick, so no effect this next year, on Jacksonville Jaguars defensive tackle Roy Robertson Harris. He's an 8-year veteran, 6'5", 290-pound interior defender, mostly at the 3 tech, can play some 5. Sometimes they slide him out further than that, but I think he does his best work inside. He's very strong. Over the last 3 seasons, started 49 games, producing 123 tackles, 11.5 sacks, 17 tackles for loss. He's kind of a stout guy at the point of attack. He's going to be part of the rotation. I like the move, especially given his salary. So his salary to acquire him this year was $1.4 million in 2024. I think that's prorated. So he's probably due somewhere around $1 million for the remainder of the season. No guarantees remaining on his contract. He's signed for a 3-year deal in the offseason with Jacksonville, but they paid all his guarantees, and Seattle is not responsible for those. So we are off the hook with him next year if we needed to walk away. We're also in a position where you could give him a little bit extra money or add a year, manipulate the contract in a way which is beneficial for Seattle too. So I really do like that move. For the Seahawks.
I like it too. I mean, this was a needed move. The defensive line is just, the depth has been a mess, with Murphy out and Williams missed a game, and it's caused guys like Jerron Reed and
Hankins to play more snaps.
Way more snaps than they should be playing. Not that those are bad players, but they're guys that, they're older in their career and you don't want them playing, more than 60% of the snaps. And I think Reed played 80-something% in this last game. That's too much. That's part of the reason why this team's having a hard time stopping the run and, just stopping anything. And so it gives them another body, but it's more than just another body because they've had bodies, right? You've had, you've had guys that you've been able to throw out there and eat space, but they're not doing enough. They're not good enough. And so they're just getting pushed around. And so the team has found that they just don't want to get guys like Quentin Bohanna out there because it hurts the team for him to be out there, but it also hurts the team for him not to be out there because that means Reed has to play more snaps. And so they needed a way out of that cycle, and getting Robertson Harris fixes that for them a little bit. I mean, so does getting Byron Murphy back, because that's bigger, because that's not just another body, that's a big time player. But getting both of those guys in there really helps and fixes this rotation that's been a major problem during this 3-game slide.
It helps them with Dre Jones, who they really wanted to focus on being able to move him outside a little bit more, especially with Nwasu needing to be off the roster on IR, and Trey Jones is just not holding up at the point of attack, and maybe this guy, Roy Robertson Harris, can do a better job and take some of those snaps and reduce the amount of time that Jones is on the field. So anyway, so all in all, I think we've got some good news. Like you said, everyone's kind of returning from all the nicks and so forth. Woolen, no news there. Trey Brown, no news as far as updates on whether they're going to be available this week.
Yeah, no news on those two guys at this point. I expect to get one the next time that McDonald has media availability, and so that's one of those are the things that will kind of get followed up on. But
and everyone else appears to be healthy,
and so they are slowly getting guys back, and the guys that have been playing through injury are going to get a chance to heal up a little bit, and so this is actually a good spot for them, because then they've got 3 weeks, and then the 3 weeks we figured out, and then the bye week, and that bye week, they'll get a chance to reset this again and get healthy again for a stretch run. I think this team has its lack of depth really showed up in these last 3 games, especially on the defensive line. And now that they're starting to get these guys back, and they made this trade, so they can have some better depth and all of that, I'm confident that this defense you're going to see a resurgence. They may not look as dominant as they looked in the first 3 weeks, because I don't know how much of that was real and how much of that was lack of talent on opposing teams, but they're going to be back to being competent, which they haven't really been the last 3 weeks.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Atlanta Falcons a little bit. So Atlanta comes in at 4-2. New head coach this year for them, Raheem Morris, done a fantastic job, especially on the defensive side for them. Just really needed to kind of revamp that whole thing. But also they've been really kind of solidified on the offensive side as well. Zach Robinson's their offensive coordinator. They've done a fantastic job just kind of putting it all together. Their 2 running back combo is really good for them. And then they brought in veteran Kirk Cousins. We can talk about that a little bit, but I want to talk about Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier as their running back tandem. They're what I would want Seattle to be, essentially, as far as a guy that's very shifty, fast, quick, but powerful in Robinson. And then you've got a guy like Tyler Algier who can just really pound you, and still he's not terribly elusive, but it doesn't really seem to matter with him, because once he gets that head of steam going, he just is a real nightmare to bring down. So
that's I really like the way that they're running the ball. Yeah, that's what Seattle's running backs look like on paper, but it never seems to be working because their offensive line's been so bad. But Atlanta doesn't have that problem. Their offensive line's been good. They've also got Kyle Pitts at tight end. That's a more talented team than I think most people, including me, realized going into this season. I was really not expecting much from them, especially with the whole, Kirk Cousins signing, and then the draft they drafted a quarterback in the sixth pick of the draft, and just there was a whole mess, and everything just seemed like it was falling apart. And so I just didn't expect much from them. But Raheem Morris has done a great job, and the offensively is where a lot of that work's been done. They've looked really good on offense.
Yeah. Well, it starts with Darnell Mooney, who can stretch the field for you. Drake London, first round pick from a couple of years ago, is really kind of coming into his own. You mentioned Kyle Pitts at tight end, never really kind of panned out after being the 4th overall pick in the 2021 draft, as finally now in an offense where it's well suited for him. Their offensive line is okay. Chris Lindstrom is there. He's probably the best offensive lineman they've got. They've got Jake Matthews as well, but everyone else is kind of marginal. That's where I think Seattle.
They're still better than Seattle's.
Yes.
There's no Stone
True.
Forsythe on that line.
No. And it's an average line, though. It's,
Yeah.
Somewhere in the 15 to 20 ranking area. Seattle is not. Seattle is nearly dead last on its offensive line when you combine pass rush against them and run blocking. They're actually a better run blocking team, Seattle is, than a pass blocking team. Yet you'd never know it based on the amount of dropbacks
they don't run
that
the
Geno
ball.
has.
And that's the thing is, they should know that, because that was how this line was built. I mean, you've got guys, like Bradford in there and Tomlinson. Those are guys that are maulers. They're run blockers. They're not good pass blockers. And so you'd think, to make their life easier, let's run the ball. And they don't. Grubb has just decided he doesn't want to run the football ever. And that's,
I think this is the game, though, Keith. This is the game. If there was a game that is set up best for Seattle to run the ball for a couple of different reasons, this is it. A, that's the weakness on the Atlanta Falcons defense, is defending the run.
Mm-hmm.
B, their offense is legit, and you want to keep them off the field. So the best way to do that is try to control the clock a little bit. I think Seattle needs to be able to establish the run in this game and effectively run the ball to take some time off the clock, convert third downs, and give Geno a real opportunity to hopefully get into some play action. Now, we're one of the lowest play action teams in the league, with one of the best opportunities to run the ball in the league with a couple of the best backs that are around. And so we need to really kind of get that going. Carolina had about the same level of offensive line as Seattle. And Atlanta was able to generate pressure against them, against Andy Dalton last game that they played, but they allowed 0 sacks against Atlanta. So Atlanta has a real marginal defensive line and a unit overall that I think Seattle could take advantage of if things start to click for Seattle's offense. That remains to be seen. We haven't seen that for a few weeks. The Lions game set aside, it's just really been kind of difficult for Seattle to establish any consistency. So it'd be kind of nice to be able to do that. And then defensively in this game, Keith, it all comes down to stopping the run. Seattle needs to man up. They need to figure it out, get physical, and make it a mission to not miss any tackles. At least they can control that a little bit. Not miss any tackles, fundamentally execute correctly as far as run fits and scheme assignments, and see if they can be a little bit more disciplined, because they're going to need to be against Bijan Robinson, who can nail you from any spot on the field, and then Tyler Algier can just run over you. So what do you think, Keith?
I think that Atlanta's not as good of a running team as you're selling them to be. They're ranked 22nd in the league in yards per game on the ground. And so I think that, the team's got to do better. I mean, the Seahawks are, one of the worst teams running the football, and they're also one of the worst teams stopping the run. But it's not like Atlanta is a juggernaut on the ground, right? This is not the Baltimore Ravens or, the San Francisco 49ers at running the ball. This is a team that they don't run it nearly as well as I think it would seem like they should, given the talent that they've got. But I think, again, this is kind of like with Seattle. It has to do with some offensive line. Now, their offensive line is geared towards pass blocking more than run blocking. And so I think that they're gonna struggle a little bit more than they should for the talent at skill position. But yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. I expect, Bijan Robinson is a beast. He should be averaging a lot more yards than he's getting. But I do think it's from the guys up front.
I agree. Okay. So you agree, though, on defense, as far as that should be the primary concern that Seattle has. I mean, that's really it in a nutshell. We're getting run over as a defense. I think we're dead last in the NFL in defending the run, or 30th. And
in yards per game, they're 28th.
Okay.
No, wait, they're 29th. 29th.
And we started out like the first 3 games, we were what, first?
That was in defending the pass.
Okay.
Defending the run, they were like 10th and 11th, somewhere in that range for them as the year started, and they've just fallen. Now they're 30th.
So in the
29th.
last, it's probably safe to say that in the last 3 games, Seattle has been the worst defending the run team in the NFL.
Yeah.
In order for that, free fall on the ranking. I think that Seattle needs to really figure things out with Grubb in this game, what it wants to do. This is probably the second or third weakest defense I think Seattle's faced so far in this season. So I do believe Seattle can do what it really wants to do against this Atlanta team. But Geno leads the league in dropbacks with 277, averaging 46.1 per game.
God, that's too many.
Nobody else has more than 251 dropbacks. And so it's in fact, he's got the most average dropbacks of in the NFL in many years. And then only 2 quarterbacks since 2000 have had more dropbacks on average than him. Matthew Stafford in 2012 with 48 and Andrew Luck in 2015 with 47. Those are the only 2 quarterbacks that have more dropbacks averaged over an entire season.
And honestly, that is not something that you want.
No.
No.
You don't want to be the Matthew Stafford of the old Detroit Lions who won, 3 games in a season, but you had a quarterback who was all world. He was trying to throw the ball all over the place,
People, there were a bunch of people that thought that Stafford wasn't good because the team lost a lot and because they put too much credit for wins and losses on quarterbacks. But Stafford's always been good. The problem early on, like back in the 10 years ago, 12 years ago, was that he was getting pummeled. He was dropping back 50 times a game and taking 4 sacks and 8 to 10 more hits. And it was unsustainable, but we got a situation where we're watching that happen with Geno, and we can't continue to do that. This team has got to learn to run the ball, do play action. It's got to figure this out.
So speaking of running the ball, so Ken Walker, these are interesting stats to me. He's one of the most efficient runners in the NFL. Racking up 155 yards after contact in 4 starts while forcing 20 missed tackles, tied for second most in the league in only 4 games. And he's also tied for 5th in 15 plus yard carries in the league. And so you've got a player with that capability in your arsenal and you're not using him. It'd be like not throwing to DK Metcalf, maybe once in a game or something like that. You've got to be able to use that weapon. And Zach Charbonnet is no slouch either. He's averaging 3.3 yards per after contact as well, ranking among the league's leaders in that category.
And if you think about it, the fact that he is leading in doing where he is in terms of those stats, and doing so behind an offensive line that's poor at best.
Well, they're the 28th ranked run blocking efficiency team in the NFL, according to advanced stats.
And they're better at run blocking than pass blocking.
Yes. Yes.
See, this isn't
Charles
just
Cross
isn't just us trying to blame the offensive line. Like, it stands out what is going on as far as everything, like statistically. This offensive line is just genuinely bad.
Yeah, I mean, even like Laken Tomlinson, who we've admonished lately, has got a run blocking win rate grade that's 13th, ranked 13th among guards. But in pass blocking, he's given up 2 sacks and 16 pressures, ranking 46th among guards. Stone Forsythe's allowed 35 pressures and ranked second to last among tackles. Bradford's allowed 4 sacks, tied for the most in the league, and has 7 penalties, the most penalized offensive line in the league.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make it any easier. So anytime you're having penalties like that, you're getting into 3rd and long, 2nd and long, and so forth and so on. It's been a mess. It really has on both sides of the ball. It's been a tough 3 weeks to watch these games. Now, with all that said, what do you expect after a little bit of time off, some really disappointing games? You've got maybe a opponent that's more evenly matched for the Seahawks to be able to kind of right this ship a little bit. What do you expect to see on Sunday?
Well, I expect the Seahawks to have more balance offensively, starters. Like, if their game plan is for them to come out and throw the ball 50 times again, they might need to look at making a change at offensive coordinator mid-season. Like, this clearly is not going to work. This would be a guy that belongs in college, because that's not going to win in the NFL. I don't think that's the case, and I don't think that is what's going to happen. But I'm just saying, if that's the game plan for them to come out and throw the ball 50 times, that's bad. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to come in and they're going to be able to establish the run a little bit better. They're going to be able to, do some stuff on the ground and really help Geno out, with some ground attack. And honestly, God, it's overdue. This is not a team that should be one of the worst in the league at running the ball. So I'm definitely expecting that. I'm also expecting Geno to, when he's not being forced to drop back 50 times a game, to be more efficient and just end up being more productive with fewer attempts because of an increased efficiency. So I expect this offense to put up some points. I really do. Defensively, I am optimistic, I'll use that word, that the defensive line is going to be more stout than it has been. And they'll be
Especially
able
if Byron
to,
Murphy's in there.
Yeah. And they'll be able to make more run stops that aren't 8 yards downfield. Give the linebackers cleaner pass to a ball carrier. Set up more 3rd and long situations where the pass rushers can get pressure and those kind of things. I expect the defense to be better. Am I expecting the defense to be great? No, I'll believe that when I see it after this last 3 weeks. But right now, I would expecting them to be decent. Is expecting them to be significantly better than they've been, and I think they can do that. The problem really has been, middle linebacker a little bit, but most of the problem has been up front. They're just getting beat at the line of scrimmage.
McDonald disagrees with you.
I know what I'm seeing on the field.
So last week, McDonald called out his 2nd-level defenders when assessing the run defense.
Well, he said he's not wrong with the 2nd-level defenders. The 2nd-level defenders were a problem last week.
He said, if you're getting beat by explosive plays, you're either getting beat one-on-one down the field through the passing game, or it's missed tackles and angles. There's creating lanes where guys can run through your defense unimpeded, which there's just too many of those right now. So that's something we're going to attack. And then he pointed specifically to, let me see if I can run that. There's a lot of things, but the variance is too high, McDonald said of the 2nd-level defenders. A lot of great plays on tape. However, when you're not doing it the way we need to do it, the ball's getting out for explosive plays. Mm-hmm. Those are the things we need to eliminate. And then you
Dotson,
talk about
Baker,
Julian Love,
Jenkins.
And those guys just haven't done it.
And I would agree with that assessment. He's right that those guys haven't done it. Those 3, Dotson, Baker, Jenkins, have been disappointing over the last 3 games, but they're also getting blown off the line on the defensive line.
Oh, that was evident last week against the 49ers. There was no question against the 49ers. Now, it wasn't so evident in the other games that I watched, but that 49 and the 49ers have some of the best interior offensive and defensive lines in the NFL.
Mm-hmm. And it really come down to part of it is Seattle's lack of depth. They had guys that were out there that were playing way too many plays and having to try and, fight through those blocks and everything when they're freaking exhausted, dude, that's setting those guys up to fail. And guess what? They failed.
So getting Roy Robertson Harris involved, getting Boye Mafe back, getting Byron Murphy back in the fold, having everybody rested and healthy for this game has to be a better situation for this defense. They've got to feel a little bit better about the opportunities here. I'm wondering a little bit about Tyrese Knight as well. Is have they just shelved him for a while, or were they trying to make a point to him in some way, and he's going to be able to come back and earn some snaps?
I hope so, because honestly, he is a promising rookie that has made some plays and done some nice things. And has he made mistakes? Absolutely. But the guys in front of him are also making a lot of mistakes. And I would rather you play the kid who has a chance to improve and grow than the old veteran that is on the downside of their career. If they're not going to play well, right, play the younger player.
Agreed. Okay, prediction time. I'll go first. So in thinking about the way that I think Seattle needs to go about winning this game, it's about taking care of the ball. You can't have the turnover ratio situation that Seattle has faced so far this season rear its head in this game. Seattle needs the turnovers. We cannot give the ball away. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to see the defense come up with something as far as either a pick or a forced fumble, get that recovered, give them an additional possession or two and take one away from Atlanta. I would like to see the defense at least attempt to hold Atlanta's running game under 100 yards. Mm-hmm. That would be beneficial. And that would also indicate to me that we're leading this game. And I think Seattle needs to jump out, get a balanced attack, jump out early in this game and force Atlanta to throw the ball. They're good at that. But if you know they're a one-trick pony, Seattle has the horses to get after their quarterback, Kirk Cousins, and move him off his spots and disrupt time.
He's not overly mobile, and he's not great on the move. He is very good with a good pocket at stepping back and diagnosing and that kind of stuff. But if you can, push him off his spot, he's not going to make guys miss, and he's not as accurate when he's on the run.
So Atlanta can score the ball, but Seattle can too. So I do see this as somewhat of a high-scoring game. So I'm going to say 27-23 Seahawks.
Ooh, I was going to go more than that. I'm thinking that this is a higher-scoring game and that it's going to be 31-27 Seahawks.
Wow. Yeah, that 27 points. I'm hoping for my prediction to come true because that means the defense played somewhat better. It's hard. I do not want them to relinquish 27 points to the Falcons, but I can see it. Falcons have been scoring.
It's a good offensive team.
Yeah, Falcons have been scoring this year, but also strength of opponents has been not quite as strong as Seattle, although Seattle had those 3 gimmies to begin the year. I think I'm trying to come to terms with what the Seahawks are this year, and whether they right this ship and move forward and we start a winning streak and we kind of pull it together and we go on to win 11 games. I'm not sure we're that team. I think this is a team that maybe we've got some talent deficits against some of the better teams in the NFL. And I weighed the talent that we do have a little higher than maybe we should have, or at least I should have. And I need to put that in perspective that this is a first year in a new head coach's regime on a roster that he completely hasn't had control of yet. And so I need to give him a little bit of grace there and say that this is probably more like a 9 or 10 win team and a learning season, and we'll go from there. But I think there's still an opportunity here. It's a good roster. It's a good roster, especially when everyone's healthy. I think it's a good roster. And that includes a guy like Abe Lucas to be able to come back. And maybe George Fant comes back and maybe he slides inside because he's one of the best 5 offensive linemen we have available. And maybe that gives that offense an opportunity to get better mid-season or down the stretch. That would be something to watch. So anyway, so you're thinking a win on the road against a pretty decent Atlanta team. That's and I am too. So
I want to throw out there that as disappointing as this 3-game losing streak has been, if you go back to our prediction show, I had the team at 3-3 at this spot.
Yeah, you did.
And I also have them 4-4 after the Buffalo game. So I'm looking at all of that and thinking like you've got an opportunity afterward, because I still had this as a 10-win team, even though they were at 4-4. So they have an opportunity to, if they can right this ship and start to figure out what went wrong in terms like defensively, and maybe get some things figured out on the offensive line, there's a chance down the stretch when you have 4 games against Arizona and the Rams, to win a bunch of games and make a run at the playoffs. So let's not write this team off.
So the Bills just acquired Amari Cooper, and Devontae Adams just went to the Jets. We faced those guys both this season. Amari Cooper comes next.
Much more worried about Devontae Adams than Amari Cooper.
Yeah, well, of course. But he just adds to the pile there with the Bills, and they already had a pretty formidable offense. So that'll be a fun game. All right, let's get past this Atlanta team. I know we can do it. I'm confident still. I know we've got the good players. I know the heart's there. Just got to execute, and we'll see how that goes. So I'm looking forward to the game. That'll be a good game. All right, let's get out of here. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is Seahawks Playbook Podcast on your favorite podcast platform and our YouTube channel. And hit that subscribe button when you get there. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk. Keith is at Myers NFL. And the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.